My name is Alex Mercer, and what happened to me still feels unreal. One night, a celebration turned into a public betrayal, and by morning, everything I owned, including my home, was gone. Stick around, you won't believe how far this story goes. Before we start, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments. Every message you leave keeps this channel alive and pushes me to share more stories that hit close to home. The evening air over Riverton shimmered, the Skyline Lounge glowing above the city like it was floating. Laughter and a live band filled the rooftop. I wasn't there for fun. Richard Mercer, my father, had insisted. Across the terrace, Ryan Mercer stood beside Emma Lane, his fiancée, both grinning like royalty. My mother, Elaine, lingered behind them, silent and stiff, fingers locked around her purse strap. A waiter offered me champagne. I shook my head. I needed to stay sharp. Then came the sound of a spoon tapping a glass. The music faded. My father raised his voice, talking about family, honor, and the son who carried our legacy. His hand reached into his jacket, pulling out a small envelope. He handed it to Ryan. "This is the deed to your new home," he said proudly. Building 14 on Parkside Drive, the same apartment I had invested $50,000 into. Applause, smiles, pride everywhere, except on my face. Then his tone hardened. "Alex, you've caused enough trouble. Leave tonight." No one defended me. Ryan avoided my eyes. Emma smirked. My mother just looked away. I walked out. No words, no scene. Just the sound of my shoes echoing in the elevator. My hands stayed jammed in my pockets as I left in my vehicle, trying to hold myself together. When I reached the apartment, silence greeted me. The walls were bare, the floors marked by dust outlines where furniture once stood. Everything I owned, gone. Even the $18,000 vehicle I had let them borrow was missing from the driveway. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. 80 missed calls, most from cousin Noah. One voicemail. "Alex, something's wrong. I stopped by your place. Everything's trashed. Not just moved out. Wrecked. Call me." I didn't even think. I got back in the vehicle and drove. The lock on the front door hung broken. Inside, drawers were ripped open, cabinets emptied, mattress tipped sideways. Even the shower curtain was gone. This wasn't packing up. This was erasing me. I called 911. 2 officers showed up, one polite but uneasy, the other tired and distant. I told them everything. What was missing, who had access, how I'd worked double shifts at a factory to pay for it all. They took notes but said little. The air from the hallway blew in through the broken frame, cold and heavy, as I realized I'd just lost more than a home. I'd lost every piece of trust I had left. The officers listened quietly as I explained what had been taken, what I'd paid for, and who had keys to the place. I kept calm, no yelling, no tears, just facts. But the older one's posture changed when I said my last name. "Mercer, you said?" he asked, glancing at his partner. I nodded. They exchanged a look. The younger one cleared his throat. "Sir, your father already filed a report, said you came by uninvited tonight, tried to take things that weren't yours." For a second I couldn't breathe. "What?" The older officer avoided my eyes. "According to the file, your brother and his fiancée are the legal residents now. Deeds already in their name." It hit like a physical blow. I paid $50,000 for that place, transferred straight to my father's account. I've got proof. The younger one's tone softened. "I'm not saying you're lying, sir. But if the deed's been changed legally and you're off the lease, it's a civil issue now." I almost laughed. "So if someone empties my home and lies to you, there's nothing you can do?" Neither of them answered. The older one just said, "You should talk to a lawyer." And they left. I didn't step back inside. I drove off, headlights slicing through the dark, no idea where I was going. 40 minutes later, I was still on State Route 22, just driving to outrun the noise in my head. I stopped at a rundown motel by a gas station, paid with my emergency card, and sat on the edge of the bed. The air smelled of mildew. I didn't care. It wasn't random anger anymore. It was clarity. This had been planned. My name had been wiped from everything like I'd never existed. I opened my laptop and started digging. Old bank drafts, messages from Richard Mercer thanking me, texts from Ryan asking for rent help, copies of car titles, bills with my name still printed on them. I saved and backed up every file. If they were crafting a story, I'd build mine stronger. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. Father, where are you? We need to talk. I stared at the screen, jaw tight. Talk. Now he wanted to talk? After burning the bridge? I flipped the phone face down. No reply. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Sleep never came. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside, the night pressing cool against my skin. I didn't have a destination, only movement. My pickup rolled past empty storefronts as I drifted toward the part of Riverton I hadn't seen in years, streets that used to feel like home. Oak Avenue, the small duplex, the smell of old coffee and frying oil. I stopped outside a place still glowing under a flickering sign, Sonny's Diner, open 24 hours. Inside, I slid into a corner booth. The waitress, gray hair, warm smile, did a double take. Alex Mercer, I'll be. Haven't seen you since you were a kid. I smiled faintly. Didn't think anyone still remembered. She poured coffee into a chipped mug. Your mom worked here non-stop. You were the quiet one with a book. Some folks stick in your mind. I stirred the cup even though I never took cream. Yeah, she worked hard. The woman nodded, leaving a dish of creamers before walking off. Rain streaked the window. I watched drops slide down the glass and memories came rushing back. Me at 9, coloring at the same booth, while Elaine hurried between tables. Ryan outside with Richard, tossing a football, charming every stranger. Then another memory surfaced. I was 10, forgot to mow the lawn. My father didn't yell. He grabbed a blanket and threw it at me. If you can't handle one chore, you can sleep outside. So I did, curled up on a porch chair while Ryan sneaked out to a party. The next morning, Dad handed him a sports drink and laughed. At least one of you knows how to enjoy life. I said nothing. Back then, silence felt safer than speaking. I used to believe that if I kept my head down and followed every rule, someday I'd earn the same nod of pride that Ryan always got. I waited years for that moment. It never came. Not when I paid for the apartment, not when I lent them my car, not even when I tried to be the kind of son a father brags about. When I finally stopped bending, their answer was simple. Erase me. I pulled out my phone. There was only one person I trusted enough to call. The line clicked twice. Alex? A familiar voice said, crisp and professional. It was Dana. Sorry to call this late, I said. You sound tense. What's going on? I need a quiet favor, I replied. Remember that bank draft I gave my dad 2 years ago? $50,000? I need the record, plus any account activity under my name that month. A pause. I do remember. You came in person for that transfer. Are you in trouble? I stared at the cold coffee on the table. No, just done letting them rewrite who I am. She didn't press further. Give me until noon, she said, then hung up. I slid the phone away and left a few bills on the counter. The drive back to the motel felt endless, street, lights blurring like faint memories. Back in the room, I didn't turn on the light. I sat on the bed and reached into my jacket. My fingers brushed against the old keepsake lighter, its surface smooth and cold. My uncle had given it to me at a milestone, saying, "Carry it as a reminder." I flipped it open and shut. Flame, snap, close. Again and again. I didn't light anything. I just watched that small burst of fire appear and vanish. By dawn, I was already on the road toward downtown Riverton, the city still half asleep under a pale sky. The district courthouse stood quiet. I walked across the cold pavement toward the records office. The clerk at the desk, A thin man with silver-rimmed glasses looked up. "Morning. How can I help you?" "I need property filings," I said. "Building 14 on Parkside Drive. My last name is Mercer." He typed slowly. "What's the first name?" "Alex." He hesitated. "Strange, there was a recent transfer on that property just a few days back." My stomach tightened. "Show me everything. Scans, signatures, dates." He motioned for me to follow him to a terminal. After a few clicks, he pulled up a document. "Filed 3 days ago. A quitclaim deed transferring ownership to David Mercer." I stared at the signature under my name. It wasn't mine. "Print that," I said quietly. As he did, he frowned. "Huh. There's another file tied to the same property. Older one. Dated 14 months ago." He turned the screen toward me. A notarized co-ownership deed. My name beside Richard Mercer's in real ink. My real signature. "That one still counts," he said. "Unless a proper revocation was filed, this earlier deed overrides the new one." "That's my leverage then," I muttered. "Print it and copy both to a flash drive." He nodded. "If you're serious about this, get a lawyer." "I am," I said simply. By late afternoon, I was unlocking the door of my storage unit just outside the city. The metal latch was stiff, the air stale with dust and cardboard. I flicked on the light. Rows of bins, papy, ears, old furniture, and a single thought crossed my mind. If they'd buried my name, I was about to dig it back up. In the back of the storage unit sat a heavy box marked receipts, contracts. Dust clung to the tape as I dragged it out and sat on the cold concrete floor. One by one, I flipped through gas bills, leases, bank statements, until a folder labeled apartment down payment slid into my lap. Inside lay a record of a funds transfer for $42,800 made the same week we closed. A sticky note in Richard Mercer's handwriting rested on top. "Appreciate this more than you know, son." But what stopped me wasn't the receipt. Wedged behind the folder was a crisp sheet of paper carrying his business logo. A clause he'd typed but never finished. It read, "Should either party wish to rescind co-ownership, written notice must be given 90 days in advance and acknowledged by the other party before transfer is valid." No signature, no date, just intent. He'd tried to make it legal and failed. I sat there letting it sink in. This wasn't only betrayal, it was void. Every lie, every false police report sat on a foundation that wouldn't hold up to daylight. I scrolled through my phone until a name I hadn't called in 5 years appeared. Carla Stone, real estate attorney, fearless and sharp. She answered on the second ring. "Alex," she said. "Got a minute?" "Always," she replied. I laid it out for her, the apartment, the forged signature, the co-ownership clause. She listened without a word. When I finished, she paused. "If you fight, you'll win. No question. But ask yourself, is this about justice or revenge?" I looked down at the folder, fingers pressed against the paper. "Maybe both," I said. I left the unit close to noon, driving without direction until the road delivered me to Pinecrest Park, the place my mother, Elaine, used to bring me between shifts. I parked and texted her, I'm here, at a back table near the cafe, alone." Minutes ticked by before she appeared, wearing that soft blue cardigan she always kept in the car. She scanned the patio, spotted me, and gave the kind of smile people wear when they know something's wrong but hope politeness will mask it. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, sitting across from me. "Hi." Silence stretched between us, heavy, but not angry. The waitress took our orders, 2 iced teas, and left. My mother's hand stayed on her purse, as if she needed its weight to steady her. "I begged your father not to do it," she whispered. "Told him it wasn't right. He said it was time to pass things to Ryan. Said it made sense." I didn't blink. Instead, I placed a thin folder on the table. "Open it." Inside were highlighted bank statements. One showed a $10,000 transfer from my account to a dealership in her name. "You said it was for an emergency," I said evenly. "Your car broke down. You needed it to get to work. I didn't ask questions. Never asked for it back. She lowered her eyes. I was going to pay you back, she murmured. That was 7 years ago. Her hands trembled as she closed the folder. Things weren't always simple. You were doing well. Ryan was struggling. Your father thought I'd stay quiet. That I'd be the dependable one who never makes trouble, I cut in. You thought that too? She didn't answer right away. You know what I remember? I asked. You standing next to him when he told me to man up, give Ryan space, when he said, don't take it so personally, and you nodded like it made sense. I didn't want more fighting, she said softly. I was trying to keep the peace. I gave a tight, bitter smile. Silence isn't peace. It's power protecting itself. Her gaze fell. I gave so much, I continued. Time, respect, money. The second I asked for fairness, I became the problem. She didn't deny it. I rose slowly, reached into my pocket, and set the old keepsake lighter on the table in front of her. You were there the day my uncle gave this to me, I said. Aide quietly. He told me, carry it as a reminder. Do you remember? She nodded faintly. Well, I said, stepping back, it's getting pretty dark. And I walked away. Not once did I look back. That night at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, lighter on my thigh. I hadn't lit it once. I just held it, the metal heavy against my palm. The old keepsake felt heavier than usual. My phone buzzed, a message from Ryan. Heard you're digging. You really want to do this? I typed back, you buried me first, now I'm digging. Then I put the phone down and stared at the motel ceiling. Tomorrow had to be different. I left before breakfast and drove northwest toward Westfield to Uncle Samir's workshop. He rarely came to family gatherings, but he was the one who never pretended. The shop smelled of sawdust and oil. He was sanding a piece of wood when I stepped in, green flannel, steady hands. Alex, he nodded. Heard about the mess. He didn't say more. Then he reached under the bench and pushed a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photocopies, loan papers, routing numbers, and an equity line tied to Building 14 on Parkside Drive. My name sat beside a signature. It looked like mine, only it wasn't. It was traced. There's an LLC on this, he said quietly. Meridian Property Group, with Ryan and Richard listed. They'd funneled a loan through it, and put the balance under my name. He shrugged. They probably figured you'd never notice. I drove back numb. At the motel, I pulled up my credit report. The unpaid balance stared at me. $140,000 debt. My hands shook. This was no family fight. This was fraud and identity theft. I opened a draft to a lawyer, then closed it. Rage felt good for a second. Clearer was a plan. I headed into town and walked into Dana Blake's office on Eastbrook Avenue. She had helped me before. Her gaze cut right to the folder I sat on, her desk. She read through the copies. They didn't just cross a line, she said. They paved an interstate over it. Her voice was flat, calm. We don't go loud. Not yet. First step, freeze the accounts and file an emergency court order. Lock the apartment. Lock the LLC assets. If the judge signs, they can't move money or property. I nodded. Quiet didn't mean weak. It meant control. She already had paperwork started before I left. For the first time in days, something in my chest unclenched. I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. I sat motionless as Dana Blake typed, her fingers sharp against the keys. A paralegal came in, collected the evidence, and left without a word. We'll file an emergency court order, she said. It'll freeze the apartment, Meridian Property Group, and every linked account. If the judge signs, everything locks down in 48 hours. No sales, no transfers, no way for them to hide a cent. They won't see it coming, I murmured. She met my eyes. They won't even know they've been gutted until their cards stop working. When I stepped out, the city lights shimmered gold over gray concrete. I hadn't felt peace, but I finally had direction. By the time I reached the edge of Riverton, shadows had stretched long across the street. I parked across from Building 14 on Parkside Drive and watched. A woman in a blazer, real estate agent, was fighting with the lockbox, her clients waiting nearby. After a minute, she frowned at her phone, then shook her head and led them away. I didn't smile. Retribution didn't always need noise. Sometimes it just needed silence. Back at the motel, I skipped dinner. The old keepsake lighter waited in the drawer. I lit the small candle by the window and whispered, "Now they'll know how it feels, to be cornered without realizing the trap's already closed." At 9:17 p.m., my phone rang. "Ryan, you think this is funny?" he snapped. "Are you trying to ruin me?" I leaned against the dresser. "No, I'm making sure you don't ruin me again." The line went dead. I turned the phone face down. No replies, no explanations. They'd taken my name, my credit, my trust. Now I was taking back my life, quietly and completely. Through the window, cars crawled beneath the sodium lights. I didn't post online, didn't write cryptic captions. I just ignored every call. By morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications stacked like a storm. One text from Corey stood out. "You seeing this?" Followed by a link. The headline hit me first. "Inside a family property dispute." The story was merciless. Names, dates, fake deeds, the LLC trail, and even screenshots of the forged transfers. Whoever leaked it wasn't holding back. Maybe Uncle Samir, maybe someone in the registrar's office tired of watching corruption get stamped as legal. By mid-morning, social media was burning. Ryan's company page flooded with comments, people calling him a thief, others demanding refunds. I didn't cheer. Relief wasn't victory yet. Then Dana Blake called. "They're moving fast," she said. "Richard and Ryan filed a restraining order. They're claiming emotional harassment and blackmail." I exhaled slowly. "They're scared," I said. "So they're spinning it." "The hearing's in 2 days," she warned. "We'll be ready, but stay calm. Don't hand them ammunition." After she hung up, I sat there in silence. Betrayal had evolved. It was war now. I thought about going public, giving my side to the reporter, but control wasn't about shouting louder, it was about staying one move ahead. I took the lighter again, thumb brushing the metal. That afternoon, I drove to the Mercer family house. Same cracked sidewalk, same brass door handle that stuck every winter. When Richard opened the door, he looked exhausted, eyes hollow. I held up the paperwork. "You always said I was weak," I said, "but you had to lie and forge my name just to stay in control. Guess that says everything." He gripped the door frame. "That says more about you than it does about me." He tried to shut the door. I caught it gently. "You could have asked for help," I said softly. "Even after everything, I might have said yes." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I let go and stepped back down the porch. The sky above Riverton was dull and heavy, and for the first time, I didn't feel small under it. I just felt done. That porch. How many evenings had I sat there as a kid, waiting for someone inside to notice me, waiting for a door that never opened unless I knocked first. But now, I didn't need their door. The morning sky over Riverton was a dull gray, clouds hanging low like they were holding their breath. My tie was crooked, mind fixed on the case ahead, when I spotted her, standing near the courthouse steps, clutching a folder tight to her chest. The notary, Maria Collins. It took me a moment to place her, but I remembered her face from 5 years ago, the day she'd notarized the apartment deed. Her navy blazer looked worn, her expression urgent. "Mr. Mercer," she said, stepping closer, her voice low. "I wasn't supposed to say anything, but after that article, I couldn't sleep." She handed me an envelope. I rechecked the original deed. The full clause wasn't scanned into the records, but I kept the notarized copy. "You'll want to see this." My hands shook slightly as I opened it. The words were plain. "If the donor of this apartment is not the sole investor, all rights revert to the party who provided over 51% of the funding. namely, Alex Mercer, stamped, signed, sealed. Maria met my eyes. "I'm willing to testify." I nodded, unable to speak. Inside the district courthouse, Dana Blake spotted me right away. I handed her the envelope. She scanned the document, eyes widening. "This changes everything." Court started minutes later. Ryan sat beside his attorney, jaw tight, arms crossed. Richard hovered 2 rows behind, face pale and tense. Maria Collins took the stand first. Calm, steady, she explained. And how the clause had been omitted from public files, how she'd kept her original out of caution. After that came the rest. Wire transfers, forged signatures, the emergency court order, the anonymous article that had already cracked everything open. The judge listened quietly, then read his decision in a firm, even tone. "The court finds in favor of Alex Mercer. The property at Building 14 on Parkside Drive is to be restored to Mr. Mercer immediately. Restitution will be paid by Ryan Mercer for defamation and misuse of legal process. Furthermore, Richard Mercer's advisory license is suspended pending investigation." The room went still. Not a word from either of them. I stood, took the keys Dana handed me, and nodded my thanks. The old keepsake lighter sat in my palm, cool metal pressing into my skin as I walked past cameras and shouting reporters. I said nothing, just kept walking. That night I returned to the apartment. The door still creaked the same way it used to. The air smelled of dust and emptiness. I sat on the floor, no furniture, no noise, and listened to my phone buzz. A voicemail from Uncle Samir. "Proud of you, kid. You didn't just fight. You did it right. Your uncle would have smiled today." I let the message play twice, then stared at the dark window. A few days later, near sunset, I walked behind the complex to the riverbank, the same place I'd gone to think when life got too loud. The water moved slow, calmly. I pulled out the lighter. It didn't feel like a memory anymore, just a symbol of what I'd finally let go. I flicked it open one last time, watched the flame dance, then dropped it into the river. "He told me to carry it as a reminder," I whispered, "but I don't need fire to see anymore." I turned away from the water. I didn't forgive them, and I wouldn't forget. Some debts aren't worth collecting, but some scars, they remind you who you refuse to beck. Have you ever been betrayed by the ones you trusted most? Did you fight back, or did you walk away? Tell me your story in the comments. I read them all.